Invasive species are becoming a problem in many of Michigan's inland lakes. What can we do about this? With us is Nordeen, board member of Michigan Lake and Stream Associations, and Jeff Krcmarik, environmental supervisor at Washtenaw County Office of the Water Resources Commissioner. Welcome to the show, Lon and Jeff.
Thank you.
So, Lon, you're also vice president of Pleasant Lake Property Owners Association. And so for those of our audience that aren't property owners on lakes, can you tell us why should they care about lake management?
Well, the lakes and the streams all are connected. So if we have a healthy lake, you're going to have a healthy water system. This is just like the blood system in the body. Mm-hmm. So our goal is to make sure our lake is as safe and as well managed as possible, so that we can operate and do boating and swimming and support what the residents want on our small lake. It's a 205-acre lake not far from here.
And what are the main plants that are a problem in your lake?
We have several that have taken over. Eurasian milfoil usually comes on heavy, and it is heavy now because I just went and looked at it. And then toward the later part of the summer, we have pondweed. Mm-hmm. And these things, sometimes the pondweed is particularly bad in that it releases in the late summer and creates big green masses along the beach.
They wrap around the propellers of the boats.
Right. The issue is at times the weeds get so thick, and this has happened to my boat, pontoon boat, you have to stop, back up to get the weeds off, and then also I kayak, and sometimes you literally slide on top of the weeds to where when you're paddling, the paddle gets all stuck with the weeds. So really the goal is to try to make the lake usable and safe, and reduce the amount of invasive species, because these things were not here, say, 100 years ago. They've been brought in by boats and other sources.
So what is the problem at Pleasant Lake?
Well, Pleasant Lake has always been weedy. There's been a lot of weeds there. In fact, we found a document from the 1920s from the DNR that did a survey that said it's a weedy lake.
Just
now,
naturally?
Well, it could be the way that it's a glacial lake, but it also is surrounded by farms.
And how do landscape practices affect the runoff?
If there's not some kind of filtering process for the water, see what they do in our lake is a lot of area around the lake is agricultural for hay and alfalfa and things like that, and they put the cow effluent on it, which is a normal accepted practice. And we certainly want to support agriculture because that's an important business in Michigan.
Sure.
However, after the whole situation down in Ohio where you get the green algae, the state has come in and asked for modifications to that. So we're looking at ways to be more careful with the runoff so that it doesn't contribute to growth of invasive species.
And what about residences? Should they have buffers,
right.
natural
buffers? Near the water line, you know how many people have normal green lawns that go right up to the lake? Well, what happens there is that there's no place to stop the runoff of things like fertilizers. And so what we're doing now is our lake was one of the early lakes that did what's called score the shore, where you look at the lake and find out what kind of shore do you have, and then encourage the homeowners to build natural shoreline areas along the water so that it stops the runoff that would be bad and prevents things like geese coming up, but also allows some of the amphibians and other animals to come out of the water. So it's an older concept that is coming back, and we think it's a good idea.
What's the problem with geese? I mean, they are native to our
environment. No, but geese are normal, but they do come, and they could be one of the causes of the spread of some of the invasive species. We're not 100% sure about that, but they eat plants and they leave deposits, as we all know.
And that could cause bacteria in the water, maybe?
Well, it's not good for for the land to have goose poop, and also to your animals. And it's just one of these things that if you have a natural shoreline that has grasses or plants or flowers, it reduces the probability the geese will come on the land. So the other thing that we've seen on our lake is that we're a rural lake, so we don't have a centralized sewage system. So there's actually, every house has its own septic field. And if the septic field, since it's very low and usually close to the lake, if it's in bad repair, it will leak into the lake and leach into the lake with our deposits.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Yeah, well, that creates weed growth.
Yeah. So, Jeff, what is the role of Washtenaw County in all this?
Well, folks like Lon get fed up with what they're dealing with, and they go door to door collecting money to help create a a management plan or somehow to like address the issue of the aquatic invasive species that are in their lake. And they get very frustrated because they can never collect enough money to actually adequately control their lake. On Lon's Lake, they tried weevils, and on other lakes, they've tried the same thing, and they've gone through all the processes by donations to address these problems, and finally get fed up, and they ask me to get involved, and my Board of Public Works, under Public Act 185, can create an assessment district. And under that assessment district, we create goals and objectives and a management plan, and we go before the communities and see if they want to become a part of an assessment district, and then we collect monies annually to address these issues. So it takes people like Lon and a few other stalwarts out on the lakes that are really proactive in organizing, and that's what we like to see. Not only do they collect money to use herbicides to control the invasive species, but they also participate in long-term management programs, such as the MyCore program, where they're out sampling, or Score the Shore. So the communities come to us, we kind of facilitate the collection of the money, we hire the contractors on board, and then we get the lake managed and measure it over time and compare it to other lakes that we're currently managing. So we like to provide a deliverable, and we like to get the communities involved and show them that their stewardship is worthwhile, and show other communities across the state of Michigan. We go to conferences, and we like to share our story about how we work together.
And I guess on the Washtenaw County website, the different lakes have the reports posted?
Right. On our Washtenaw County Water Resources Commissioner's Office, under Lake Management, we put all the financial reports, all the annual management opinions that are created, and we also have some helpful videos on there about the relationship between septics and lakes, septic systems and lakes, and how to control the effect that you have by managing your lakeshore properly.
Okay. What happened with the weevils? I was interested in that.
Well, they work in certain areas of the lake where there's no motorboat activity, but when boats go through and chop up the weeds, the weevils are less effective. So in some bay areas where there's no activity with boats, sometimes weevils are effective in those areas, but generally speaking, as a whole lake treatment, it doesn't work. They're meant to be used with another technique, like herbicides, and then use weevils in certain areas of the lake.
Lon, you were mentioning they're expensive, like $1 a piece or something?
Yeah, I mean, our lake tried them, and it's conceptually a very good idea. The three things that are really an issue, though, Jeff just talked about one of them, the concentration. They're expensive, they're $1 a piece. The other is, think about the fact that the weeds keep evolving rapidly. So you've got to have a weevil that wants to eat, this kind of weed, and if it evolves over, say, a 2 or 3 year time frame, is that original weevil going to eat the right weed? So
it's amazing they can evolve that fast.
Well, it happens, and the other thing is that
super weeds.
Yeah, you look at the weeds. I mean, you don't want to cut them when they're the kind of weeds that we have on our lake and many other lakes, because it spreads them. We tried the weevils, so ultimately we ended up doing a testing program where we identify what kind of weeds are they, and then working through Jeff and his team, we annually do the assessment, and then we do a chemical treatment and then test again. So our lake goal is to test, evaluate, and test again.
And you only treat selectively, right? Because you can't, even legally, you can't treat the whole lake, right?
No, and in fact, it's very detailed, Barb. We have to actually put in a very extensive permit to the state. And they tell us chemicals that can be used, areas that can be treated. For example, the little pond weeds, they can be attacked, but the lily pads cannot be attacked with chemicals. So there's very significant rules about, remember the word is invasive, things that do not belong there can be chemically treated, but things that are natural and normal in our lake, you're not supposed to just drive them away and attack them. So it's a careful management program, and that's where Jeff and the county have really been helpful, because they've worked with many other lakes. So we have the benefit of learning from their experience, and then they learn from us. So it's a good team.
And our annual management opinion provided by our consultant, Aquest, provides us some tangibles so we can measure the biodiversity from years past into other lakes, and also the biomass that's in the lake, the type of weeds that we have in these lakes. And provide something that you can say, well, they're not there this year, but this is a little more tangible in saying we've reduced it by this much in terms of the quality of the treatment that we've been applying for this last several years. And it provides something that we can really hang our hat on when we're trying to show the effectiveness of our programs.
What's been the experience at Pleasant Lake?
On our lake, I go around and talk to as many people as possible, and generally the reaction is very positive, because what happens is once we, do the treatment, now the people are concerned because they want to know when is the treatment so they can stay out of the water and they make sure it's safe. But once it's over, they notice within a week or so the weeds actually start to dry up and fall down. And from maybe whatever date we do it, usually it's early June, through late August, the weeds are significantly suppressed. Now, as you pointed out, you can't do the whole lake. So what we try to do is the area where the boats go and the area around the edge where you want to swim and use the water.
Okay.
But it's been very positive to date, and this is year 4.
So are people still being able to fish and do all the usual?
Yep. I go out regularly. I mean, every couple days with a kayak or a pontoon boat or sometimes a paddle board. And I'll tell you, I can see clearly when the treatment occurs, the impact, and when the weeds come back. So far, our experience has been great. The residents are happy, and it also feels good to be part of a larger team.
Great. And we were talking earlier about the significance of having a boat launch, public boat launch, in terms of these things getting into the lakes. Tell us more about that.
Well, Lon doesn't have a public boat launch at their lake. Other lakes in our community do. And we try to get involvement from the Department of Natural Resources to make sure that it's posted regarding washing your boat before you put it in and put it out. But there's no oversight at these launch sites. So it's on an honor basis to making sure people clean their boats off. But that's one of the methods of transferring these weeds from lake to lake is through the boats. So we've been bending the ear of the legislature and of the Department of Environmental Quality, letting them know that these folks are managing the state's lakes and are putting their own money into controlling invasive species, and the root cause is actually preventing them that we should be looking at.
What we found at the recent conference that Jeff and I both attended is that there's more than $25 million annually being spent by lake homeowners to put lake management into effect, but then boats that are untreated, unwashed, come in and they undo everything we're trying to do. So, as he just pointed out, that's really important to look at. How can we do a coordinated, cooperative solution rather than waste all this money? Because, you end up knocking down the weeds maybe in your lake for a month, and then a new boat comes in and brings something more invasive.
Right. And it also protects the property values, not only water quality, but actually a study was conducted in the state of Washington. In those lakes that did not address invasive species, the property values were 19% lower than those lakes that have long-term management practices.
Wow, that's a
so
lot.
It affects you financially, but
yeah. Wow. Yeah, and Michigan being such a water wonderland, we've got so much tourism dollars coming in for our lakes too, I guess, because we're all impacted, every
Correct.
citizen. Yeah. And what are some of the invasives that are coming that you're mostly worried about in Washtenaw County?
Well, Eurasian milfoil, starry stonewort. There's some hybrid pond weeds that are coming into our county.
Zebra mussels.
And keeping an eye out for a hydrilla.
Okay. Do we have zebra mussels in Washtenaw County yet?
Yes, we do. We've had.
That's too bad. Well, this is really important stuff, and thank you so much for being here today. It's been really interesting. We're out of time, unfortunately.
Thanks, Barb.
Thanks.
For an online archive of today's show, go to ewashtenaw.org/greenroom. Thanks for joining us here in the Green Room.